As a kid who grew up in the 80s and 90s, when I think gaming, one of the first companies that comes to mind is Konami. And goddamn you, Wes, for making me say that again. Well, Konami had made itself a household name with a deluge of fantastic titles on the NES. So many, in fact, that they had to create a shell company in order to bypass Nintendo's strict limitation of only 5 published titles per year. It is hard to believe that there were even more available on the Nintendo Entertainment System's Japanese counterpart, the Famicom. Tori Hououhen, Gaou no Bouken, which translates to Firebird Phoenix Chronicles Gao's Adventure. This game was released by Konami for the Nintendo Famicom in January of 1987, and it is based off the manga series Tori, or Phoenix, created by Osamu Tezuka. In Gao's Adventure, the protagonist, Gao, constructs a magnificent phoenix sculpture dedicated to a mythical bird who grants eternal life. But once completed, the sculpture is then stolen and broken up into 16 pieces and scattered across space and time. Determined to possess immortality, Gao sets off on his quest to recover the 16 phoenix sculpture fragments. Gao's Adventure is a side-scrolling platform action-adventure game where the protagonist is armed with a throwing spear used to impale baddies, and also employs a unique mechanic where blocks are utilized to create additional steps to access otherwise unreachable platforms. By pressing down and the B button, Gao can lay down blocks in front of him, or even beneath during a jump. It also means that Gao can't crouch and fire his spear at the same time. This often requires a little creativity when attempting to dispose of an enemy below the waist, or when attempting to break open the chest that contains so many invaluable items, such as additional blocks to lay down. Dispatched foes will also drop blocks that can be collected, otherwise they'll move continuously until resting against a stationary object or falling off a ledge. These blocks will often impede on your progress, but they can be destroyed by a single spear, so there's that. Blocks below can be removed by crouching on and jumping on top of them 3 times. Wow, I didn't even know that, Wes. Thank God for playthroughs on YouTube and Wes's review, because without any English instructions, I would have never thought of pulling that maneuver off, and it's kind of mandatory in order to complete the game. Conquering each stage rewards you with one of the 16 Phoenix sculpture pieces awaiting at the end. You'll often encounter bosses along the way, who, for the most part, are just pushovers. With the ability to fire your spear overhead in addition to the standard shot, the guardians tending to the exit of each level don't offer much resistance. It's just a shame that you get stuck with the same weapon throughout the entirety of Gao's Adventure, despite the numerous items that can be collected. None of them powers up the default weapon. You can, however, collect seashells that increase your life meter, onigiri that replenishes your health, and mirrors that allow you to pass through structures, among other things. Initially, the game starts out as yet just another platformer in a vast sea of them available for Nintendo's Japanese 8-bit console. Despite the unique block mechanic within Tori, the game seemingly does not offer a whole lot more when compared with similar adventures. This is blatantly evident once you realize that after 3 or 4 stages, the background music never changes. Seriously? The reason I bought this game, other than how cheap it was, is for the fact that it had a Konami name slapped on it, and I figured, well, if this is Konami, shit, at least I'll have some decent tunes to listen to. What a friggin' letdown. This was almost a deal breaker for me. I just couldn't get into it, and it wasn't long before I lost interest. On a whim, I decided to give it another shot. And oh boy, am I glad I did. Once you complete Stage 7 and collect your 7th Phoenix piece, the game restarts from Stage 1. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, Wes, you blithering idiot, you said there were 16 pieces. How can there be only 7 stages? Well, this is where things start to get a bit confusing. Tori is peppered with hidden portals throughout the game, each of which will transport you to a brand new stage. Warping from one stage to another sends you across outer space where a whole new world unfolds. Ah, there we go. Now we've got some new music. The aesthetics of Gao's Adventure blows the lid off the top after traveling to the first warp. For an early 1987 title, the backgrounds for some of these landscapes are quite exquisite. From crater-filled moons and a frozen landscape with the Aurora Borealis looming in the background, to a volcanic valley crumbling beneath a blood-red sky straight from the depths of hell. The environments are simply enchanting. It's a complete Jekyll and Hyde effect in contrast to the first 7 stages. They begin to share a look more akin to the games like Castlevania and The Goonies 2, both of which were released around the same time frame. But you won't get to stand around and enjoy the sights for too long, as the difficulty also gets turned up a notch, and Gaou has to traverse more harrowing stages to complete his task, with many of them even repeating. On top of that, the stage numbers keep recycling from 1 through 7 until you reach the 8th and final stage. Yeah, it's just as confusing as it sounds. Eventually, you'll have to uncover more hidden portals to advance further, otherwise you'll find yourself becoming lost within this endless loop of previously completed stages. I actually had to restart my game several times after becoming lost in said loop, before finally conceding and turning to a playthrough for help. If you have the patience to uncover the correct path all on your own, I commend you, and at least you'll have unlimited continues to get the job done. But there's no shame in consulting a guide in order to tackle this one. Tori Hououhen Gaou no Bouken is a unique Japanese platformer that, in my opinion, was a bit ahead of its time. It may lack the bells and whistles compared to some of its peers, but it's definitely an 8-bit Konami game. That's unquestionable. Hell, they even have recycled gunshot sound effects from Bayou Billy. Despite the clueless, cryptic puzzles that must be solved, the game's challenge is fair, has decent controls, and is a lot of fun once you learn how to play and where to go. The visuals are alluring for an early 87 title, but surprisingly, with only 4 stage themes throughout, plus a single boss theme, the soundtrack in this 8-bit Konami action-adventure falls a bit short. But since Tori can be found for relatively cheap, I absolutely recommend this one for those of you die-hard platform fanatics out there. It's definitely worth checking out.